Hey everybody, John Huber here, Maryland Education Network, brought to you by Maryland K-12. What in the world is going on with the State Department of Education and all this testing? Well, I hope to make a little bit of sense out of it for you, because it's not that complicated, and what it amounts to is really, really poor performance, and they're just trying to hide it. I don't think they're trying to change anything. I think they're just trying to muddy the waters a little bit so that nobody really can, it's not as obvious to everybody what's going on. A quick lesson in, you got to kind of go back a little bit and say, okay, where did this all come from? Well, as you know, over the years, Maryland has gone through a variety of testing programs from MSA, MSPAP, PARC, and whatnot. Now we're into MCAP. And you know, the interesting thing is every time they change to another one, they badmouth the former one, and they go, well, that just was not, it was not rigorous enough, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it's only a matter of time within, say 5 or 8 years when they start bad-mouthing the one they're taking now. But anyway, in the spring of 2020, they were ready to take the first PARC, or the first MCAP assessment, the one they're using now. That was the first one. Along comes COVID. They stopped. They shut it down. They didn't test in 20. They were out the rest of the year. The 2021 school year, they were mostly out, in and out, and they didn't test that year. The fall of the following year, of the 21-22 year, they had an initial, just a kind of a quick assessment in the fall, and it was horrible. The results were horrible. They sort of said what happened with those. They sort of provided the results. They sort of didn't. Then came the spring of 22 last year, was the first full-fledged implementation or administration of the MCAP. And I said at the time, this is going to mean a lot. Well, they took it, and they never reported the scores for ever and ever and ever. And I started calling people that I know in the school system saying, what's up with the MCAP results? And oh, they're embargoed. They like to use that term. They're embargoed. Finally, in like the fall of the following year, towards the end of the 21 year of the following school year, a couple of them trickled out, and they weren't good. They looped around, and then come January of 23, this is like more than halfway through the following school year, they start trickling out the school, and the scores rather, and they were just not good. And their explanation for what took them so long to report the scores was they were reassessing the standards, and they were reassessing the levels of proficiency and whatnot, which is, makes sense. They have to determine the cut scores, just like, anything else. If, you're in a track meet, there's cut scores before you go on to the next event, or, in golf, if you follow golf, after Friday or Thursday and Friday, they find a cut score before you go around, before you go to the next round. It's similar. They find where the cut scores are, and they kind of have to, maneuver through that a little bit with the first assessment. Understood. But even so, they were just, the results were horrible. They published them, and what happened was Fox Baltimore has a program called Project Baltimore, where they just relentlessly go after the school systems, particularly in Baltimore City. And they went in there, and they saw all these testing, and they started reporting and saying there were 23 schools in the city where not one single student met MSPA, proficient, were scored proficient, or met standards, scored proficient, however you want to call it. And they started reporting this, and then all of a sudden Fox 45 looks up, and those scores are gone off the website. They're like, what happened? They took them down. Several weeks later, they come back up, but it's all hidden. It's all hidden under these little asterisks. And, if it's less than 5% and more than 95%, and just asterisks and things, they were just kind of hidden. Now, they were not lying about it, but they're just kind of hiding it. They're not. And what they're claiming is it was enhanced privacy protection. They claim they're protecting the privacy of the children. And Fox is calling them on every possible front, and it just doesn't add up. What adds up is it's a horrible score. They scored horribly in the state, and they don't want kids, they don't want parents to see what's going on. So they just kind of it's a bunch of smoke and mirrors. Fox 45's not buying it, and they just keep questioning them. Now last week or earlier this week, they went to the state board meeting, and they're tracking him down, with the microphone, Mr. Chaudhry, and he's like going into the other room and shutting it. He went into an empty room and shut the door and locked the door. Then they tried to talk to the president of the board, and he's just saying, well, we stand by our superintendent. It's an operational issue, and we don't get involved in it. It's just a mess, and it's going to lead to the downfall of the superintendent. And again, it's one of these things. Now, here's what I believe. I believe what's at the heart of this is there are people who create these tests and create these standards and create these procedures who are so far removed from the classrooms that they just don't get it. And they're sitting in the room going, "Oh, we're going to challenge these kids, and we're going to make this difficult, and we're going to raise the bar," and all that's wonderful, but they just don't have the recent experience to know what teachers are dealing with on a daily basis. What is the answer? I don't know, but it's just, we're not going to test our way out of this. COVID was a big issue, there's no question, but it wasn't so much COVID as it was how we responded to COVID as a state and as a system. Everybody was locked down, nobody could get in. And then what happened is the kids got home and they started sitting on their computers and they go, "Hey, this is cool. I want to do this." Now they can't. Attendance rates are all-time lows, and it's not just school. It translates into the work environment. I can tell you now, you can't find anybody that wants to come to work anymore. They want to sit home in their pajamas and I follow a lot of that market of education in particular. You go online and you see online teaching positions, online administrative positions, and a job pops up one day. Within a couple of hours, there's several hundred applications. So there are no shortage of teachers in the online world, but there's a big shortage of them actually in the classroom. So anyway, this whole thing is just a mess, and it is caused by unrealistic standards that are being set, unrealistic goals, and probably more importantly, is when failures occur, and failures will always occur in any scenario, in any situation. The knee-jerk reaction of the state people, of the state educators, the MSDE, is to try and hide it and to try and cover it and to try and gloss it over. And they're not actually lying about anything, but it's that political thing where we can't say, "Hey, man, it wasn't good, and here's what we're going to try and do to improve it." That's what people want to hear, and they just want to do it. They don't want to do that. The people in the MSDE don't want to talk to the media. They don't want to respond to Fox Baltimore because they all have these nice jobs, on North Avenue in Baltimore. They don't want to give that up. They're not going to, so everybody's just towing the line, and it's a real mess, and the kids are suffering. So I hope that makes a little sense to you. I'll have some more coming up on this. I got some things coming up on Maryland Blueprint for Progress. Don't forget about this. All the individual LEAs, the local educational agencies should all have their plans in. We'll take a look at a few and see what's going on. So anyway, thanks for joining. Subscribe if you go on my website, marylandk12.com. Check a little box there when it comes up and say you want to get the newsletter. I'll send you some things on the newsletter, every now and again. So, and I'm not flooding you with anything, just some general interest stuff regarding education, in particular Maryland as much as possible, K-12 and whatnot. So anyway, thanks. Have a great day.